Hello, and welcome to my talk on taking ownership and betting on yourself, about how to find the confidence you need when finding your way in the creative industries. Creative confidence isn't a feeling you need to sit around and wait for. Something you build up by taking ownership, making small bets on yourself, and doing what you do best. It happens over time and over practice. So if you're not feeling it yet, that's pretty normal. What you're going to leave with today, hopefully, is a clearer model of how creative careers often progress. A little bit about my own creative career, a simple framework and toolkit of how to take steps towards confidence in yourself and your career, and a simple task to help get you started at the end. Okay, so I am James Coy. I work at True Group. We're a London design agency focusing on advertising, marketing, and designing and building apps and websites. And I'm the head of product, so I work on designing apps, designing websites, and leading the teams that build them. But it wasn't always like that. I started out as a Norwich Uni alumni from film, and I got a job straight out of uni in a film and video company locally. After about 3 years there, we hit lockdown and I started to have a bit too much time on my hands, and I started to kind of allow myself to follow some of those creative itches that I got, that curiosity into different paths, different mediums that I hadn't explored before. And before I knew it, I realized that I kind of really wanted to be a designer and work on, websites and apps. So I retrained on a short UX course, learned a lot here about, how to build apps for people, how to shape people's experiences online and all this kind of stuff. But really that was a little spark and a little kind of bridge across into this world. Once I retrained, I started freelancing, not quite out of a want to freelance, but more out of necessity. I needed to find projects, I needed to find jobs. So I just started freelancing for people. I put myself out there and over time I built up a list of clients, and one day one of those clients hired me full time. So I've been at True Group for about a year and a half, working in this job, this career that I love. Just want to talk about that kind of itch for a little bit and following your curiosity. For me, this took the shape of watching tons of YouTube in lockdown. I was watching a bit too much YouTube, and a lot of it was really design focused, and it was really about kind of like aesthetics, how to design stuff really well, all of this kind of stuff, as well as how to make websites. And before I knew it, I was downloading Figma, sitting there and designing little fake websites. At one point I even built a whole fake brand for a stationery company. And part of that is having a little bit too much spare time, but another part of it is just trying to follow kind of where that creative curiosity is trying to lead me. Before I knew it, those tiny little spec projects that I was working on started becoming spec projects that I was kind of proud to show people, and I was putting out there, and I was building up a little bit of a portfolio. And this really helped me when I kind of came to make the switch, because I had all of these little projects that I look back on and I don't think they're good now, but at the time I was really proud of them and I was really happy to share them with people. And it was actually putting that work and then following the curiosity and trying to explore and experiment in this new medium that helped building that portfolio of work, that I could get out there and get feedback on it and start thinking of myself in this different world, in this kind of design world that I feel like I was starting to earn a place in by putting in the work every day. For me, film was great, but there was something that kind of didn't fit with the lifestyle that I kind of wanted to have, the long days, the traveling, the off and on, one day you're on set and it's like really high intensity and then the next day you've got nothing to do. And kind of balancing that and finding a balance and rhythm in my life was was more difficult than I feel like it should have been. And that kind of helped making me not fall out of love with film, but make me kind of want to explore other aspects. One way I really put myself out there when starting this new creative career was I joined a 48-hour startup hackathon called Sync the City. And when signing up, you only really have three options. You have developer, founder, designer, are the roles that you're allowed to kind of be in this startup hackathon. And I didn't really have a choice there. I had to put designer and turn up and be a designer. I had to kind of put the imposter syndrome aside and just sit at that table and put my skills to use. This experience, working in a team again towards a shared goal and vision, was instrumental in pushing that imposter syndrome aside and focusing on what I could bring to the team. With a tight deadline of 48 hours and a keynote pitch looming, we kind of had to forget the rest of it and just get on with the work. We had to build a really strong brand and some interesting experiences online to communicate what we wanted to do. Here's a little photo of the team I joined. It's safe to say we did not win the hackathon, and unfortunately this is what the website looks like today. But the experience was vital to building my confidence and finding friends and collaborators in this new creative community. It also helped practice that muscle of putting myself out there and taking that risk of sharing my work and calling myself a designer properly for the first time, and not kind of adding a qualifier or adding a but at the end or saying I want to be, but just saying, this is who I am now, this is my role, and really kind of putting that out into the world. Okay, non-linear is normal. When I first started my film career and I got that kind of dream job with that great team in Norwich, I really didn't expect to be leaving that and kind of starting again on a new career. It was as big of a surprise to me as anybody, but sometimes when you follow that path and you find a new path, you just have to kind of go all in. But one thing I didn't realize is that actually it wasn't going to be starting again. A lot of creative careers share skills, soft skills and hard skills. Your soft ones are your creative communication, your collaboration, and then maybe your harder skills are, how to change a lens on time. All those hard skills are maybe not transferable, but the soft skills really are. And the more you build those up in a creative career, like your taste, your communication, how you collaborate with people, how you give feedback and how you take feedback, all of those things really do help you look more like a professional, look more like a seasoned creative, even when you're in a new space and a new world. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the start of my freelance journey, because this is where a lot of the confidence stuff kind of became real for me. When I started freelancing, it wasn't some big master plan. I just needed to get out there, find work, find an income in a world where I didn't really have much of a network yet. I'd retrained, I was trying to move into this new career. So I did what I think a lot of people do. I signed up to everything, Upwork, Contra, all these other freelancer platforms. Anywhere I could put my work somewhere and have a chance of being found. And honestly, I had quite a bit of success on Upwork early on. I found some really great clients on there, and over time built up my network. The great thing about these platforms is you don't always need to do loads to be found. You just need to make it easy for the right person to understand you and find you. So I put up my portfolio, I put up my work, I wrote out the project in a way that was clear and searchable. I tried to make it quite SEO friendly, thinking about those keywords, web design, app design, Figma prototypes, landing pages, the tools I was using. And then I just applied for as many jobs as possible. It was a bit of a fire hose approach at first. Most proposals went nowhere, and that's kind of normal as part of the game. You don't need every single proposal to land a conversation. You just need one every now and then. And the goal with the proposals isn't really to win a job. It's really to start a conversation. Because once you're in the room with someone, once you're on a call, once you're in that dialogue, it becomes much easier. They can kind of see you, they can see what you're like, you can ask questions, they can ask you questions, and it stops being this weird audition and starts becoming a proper conversation about the work. One thing that helped early on was reading, it's a tiny image, reading this book, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns. It talks a lot about how to sit in that room and start a conversation, and really thinking about how that dialogue can open up without having to interview each other, and really about trying to find what's the right fit for both of you in that situation. I think a lot of freelancing is basically being in the right place at the right time. You can't really control the timing, but you can control whether you're visible. You can control whether you're approachable and whether you're consistent. My tangible ways of finding work were pretty simple. I put real work on my portfolio, even if it was self-initiated. I wrote proposals that ask questions, not writing an essay about myself, but putting a question to them, putting a little Calendly link at the bottom, trying to kind of engage that conversation. And I applied consistently, even when it felt like nothing really was happening or it wasn't really working. And when I did get on calls, I tried to be calm, friendly, useful, and really open up that dialogue. You don't really need every proposal to hit a home run and get a job. You just need a few to turn into a conversation. Then you need to be good at starting those conversations and bringing those into a real project. And then once you have one or two projects, it starts to get easier. Those conversations are really tough at first. One of the things that's really difficult when you're starting out is knowing how to approach someone and ask for money for what you do. That invoicing, that kind of budgeting part of the journey is really tough. And the only way you really get better at that is with practice. You've got to set a decent price that you think is reasonable. Be willing to negotiate on that depending on the project. And just be upfront. You just got to get out there and do it, as quickly as possible to get it out of the way. Practice at it. When you start building connections in the space you wanna work in, you start building relationships with people who've seen you deliver projects. And people tend to look after the freelancers they enjoy working with. So it becomes really important to kind of be the kind of freelancer that people want to keep around. You got to be on time, you got to do what you said you'd do, you got to work hard, and you got to be really friendly. Make it easy for people to hire you time and time again. I wanted to talk about that a little bit more, because one of the projects that really mattered for me early on was when I found an Upwork. I got shortlisted for a job. We got on a call and we just really gelled. It didn't feel too stiff. It didn't feel like I had to prove like I was some design mastermind. We were just talking about the project and how we could get it done. And this client needed help on quite a massive project. It was a fairly large company and it was designing quite a playful internal experience. It didn't really get seen by the outside world. It was all internal, but it was quite a lot of creativity in it. And it pushed me a lot. It was like a big Figma prototyping job, so I could really show off my skills in the tools, but also push myself and find ways of trusting myself to bring that creativity, bring that experimental kind of side to the design and try something a bit new. Weirdly enough, working on that corporate project was quite grounding. There's this clear reason for the design choices. There's a real problem. There are real kind of users that you're thinking about and real constraints. So you've got to be creative in the design, in kind of what you choose to be creative in the small kind of little details, and also creative in the way that you can present it to people. The solution itself, though, is super clear, because you're sort of solving a problem that a big team is trying to solve. You're all in this together trying to solve something. And I wasn't doing it alone. It was working towards a shared goal with a team made it easier to turn up every day. It gave me a rhythm, it gave me momentum, and it made the practice of just showing up feel less like this huge personal battle. Now, the biggest challenge for me on that project wasn't the tools, it wasn't the Figma, it was just kind of getting out of my own head. I was stuck on what I thought I should be doing, on what I thought I wasn't good enough for. And I think a lot of us do that. We start pre-rejecting ourselves a bit. But the client really believed in me, She was really supportive, and kind of bringing me onto that project and taking the time to kind of let me have the time to experiment and work out everything on the canvas. Day by day made it easier to really deliver the project. And having someone else bet on you early is really powerful. And it just quiets that doubt just enough for you to work, and it gives you permission to focus. When you focus, you can kind of do your best work, right? So I started letting myself push it a bit further, push the design a bit further, and build something that was quite interesting, not just safe and what I thought I should be doing, but what was right for the project. So yeah, for me, freelancing was a mixture of showing up a lot, being visible, starting conversations, and then being a good freelancer, doing the work, getting it done on time, and trying to do good work when I got the chance, which leads me into the framework. Okay, so here is the framework. Simple, repeatable tools and ideas that you can put into practice whenever it feels like you need to build your confidence. So this is where the framework really starts for me. In UX, I learned that progress is fueled by feedback loops. You make something, you test it, you learn from it, you iterate on it. That's how products get better over time. And honestly, I think that's the exact same loop you can use for your creative practice and your career, especially when you're just getting started. You can make something small, you put it out there, and you see what lands and what doesn't. You can take one lesson from it, and then you can make the next thing with that lesson in mind. If you're not quite sure what this looks like, think about maybe a small Instagram post that you put up, a mock-up, a case study, a redesign, whatever. You get 10 comments on it, that's some feedback, I'm sure. You get none, that's probably even better feedback. They're just these little signs every time you share your work and use it as the basis for your next piece. This is probably the part that feels uncomfortable at first. It's like that old dress for the job you want, not the one you have idea. It's basically the same thing, except you act like the person you want to become before you feel 100% ready. You don't wait for permission to start calling yourself the role you want. You just start practicing it. For me, this is just a small set of actions. It's choosing a passion project and finishing it. It's giving yourself a deadline, taking yourself really seriously. It's sharing your work and putting it out there and following up with people and showing that you're really committed. And the thing is, the more you do these little actions, the more you start believing that identity. You start showing up as that person. And when we're lucky, the work starts to line up with that as well. Okay, so identity follows evidence. Continuation of the last idea, right? One of the biggest shifts for me was, this idea of doing the reps. I'm not a gym bro, but I've heard that if you do the reps, you build the muscle. It's kind of the same thing for creative confidence, except it's even harder when you come out of uni or when you're kind of on your own doing it, because nobody's setting you deadlines. Nobody's there to kind of push you along. Nobody's there to make sure that you turn up every day. You've got to be that person for yourself. You've got to hold yourself accountable, when you don't have a brief, when you don't have that structure. And I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. So sometimes you actually need to sit down and give yourself those projects. What helped me was creating my own self-initiated briefs, little spec projects. I used to go to like ChatGPT a lot and, be my client. Work towards that brief as if it was a real project. Obviously, this doesn't work all the time, but it's really good to kind of help you get that practice in. Okay, now we're going to talk about shifting to an outward focus. This one's quite simple, but self-consciousness normally shrinks when you're starting to serve the work you're doing, the teams around you. When you stop staring at yourself and start asking, how do I make this project work really well? That anxiety starts fading a little. A creative professional is someone who can come in and make choices for someone else's needs. That's what makes it professional. You're not just making what you like. You're making something that helps, that communicates, that solves a problem, that tells a story. And this also kind of works in interviews and calls when you're trying to discuss if you're right for a project. It's never a test, it's a discussion. Are we a good fit for each other? Are my skills useful here? And am I excited by this problem? Shifting to that outward focus can help you lift that burden off yourself and really focus on what it is you want, what you want to get out of a project, and just delivering that project really well. Consistency compounds. Try not to spread yourself too thin. Give yourself time to lay the foundations every day and build your career slowly but surely. You can change directions later if you need to, but if you're trying to do everything at once, it's going to be hard to compound it. So pick one thing you want to get really good at, keep showing up for it. It's not going to be glamorous, but it's kind of how you start building that confidence. It will soon kind of become second nature just to turn up at your desk and just start the work, get the stuff out there. And before you know it, it starts to become real work for real clients that you start feeling really proud of. Here are a few small bets that you can take on yourself. You could buy yourself a domain or name your portfolio. Invest in a short course that fixes a real kind of skill gap that you have. Ask someone for a portfolio review. Super useful to kind of put your work out there, get in front of professionals, and really kind of start that dialogue and understand where your gaps are and where you might need to start laying some more foundations on some more skills. Submit some pieces to galleries or an online challenge, or just put it out onto like little creative communities. Pay for a really good mock-up pack, templates, or like fonts, something that you can use that would just make your work look that little bit nicer, make it a little bit easier to kind of display that out into the world. Put some money aside for tools or learning, and do a collab with someone you respect. Build a strong case study, find someone on another course that has a kind of a good skill set that can mesh quite nicely with yours. And see if you can work on a project that, can be stronger because both of you from different kind of disciplines worked on it. And then, share your work. This is such an important point for the feedback and opportunities and this loop we talk about. Sharing your work is so fundamental to building your confidence, because it's not until you share your work, you get in the practice of putting your kind of neck out there, taking that risk, and putting your work in front of other people. That's when it's going to start feeling really, really real. You can't control how it's going to be received, but you can decide that you'll post, you'll share it with a group, you'll send it to a friend. You don't need to do it on every single platform. It's nice to spread out, but don't give yourself too much work. Pick two, be consistent, let people see your work evolving. And that's where the momentum starts to build. Not just about building an online community or anything like that, or getting an audience and monetizing it, something like that, being an influencer. But more about just getting your work out there and getting in the practice of finishing something enough and being proud enough of something to put out into the world and get that feedback. And then starting that loop. Make, share, learn, repeat. This is what betting on yourself looks like in practice. It's not a big leap, it's a repeatable cycle that you can build your confidence slowly. Okay, so before we finish, I want to kind of give a little task that is fairly easy to do to kind of put into practice some of these things we've been talking about today. This is about getting your work out of your sketchbook and into the world. Get some feedback on it, think on it, and start the loop. We're going to pick something that we made recently that didn't quite make it out into the world, set a timer, review it, spend the rest of the time just getting it a little bit better. It doesn't have to be perfect, just better. And then spend about 10 minutes packaging it up to show off. I would recommend, if you're a designer or you're doing stuff like that, get some really good mock-ups for it. If you're doing anything physical, then just go out and take some really great photos. Once those 60 minutes are done, now we have something ready to share that's going to be like something that we're proud of, something that's good enough to really put out into the world. And now the important bit is putting it out into the world. Try and get some feedback on it. Try and post it in a way that invites some conversation, invites some kind of criticism, hopefully, and begin that loop. Save that, bank that, and start kind of thinking about how you're going to put that into your practice next time round. For me, this is going to be finishing off an app design that I've been thinking of for a while. A little personal bit of software where I'm hoping to kind of start bookmarking stuff in my own little app that I'm building. But yeah, let's all get into the habit of making and sharing a bit more. All right, quick recap. Confidence isn't something that you're going to suddenly get. You've got to build it by taking ownership, making small bets on yourself, and doing the reps. The tools are simple. You've got to run those feedback loops, shift to an outward focus, stay consistent, and share your work so you get those signals back and you can find out if you're on the right path. And if you do only one thing after this, do the 1 hour task, pick something you haven't shared, make it a bit better, package it up and put it out there and ask for a little bit of feedback. That's the whole point. It's not a big leap. It's just running these little tools on purpose, getting better every single time. Thank you for listening to my talk on creative confidence. Give me a message if you have any questions.